And maybe in the interest of time, we will get started. Why don't we do that? Hi everybody, thank you for joining us. This is Ann Helgerson with the Psych team, and Nancy Welcher is also here from the Psych team. Whoop, whoop. And we have Bob Feldman with us as well, which we're fortunate to have. We were asked to give a refresher on the POWER framework, and what we thought we would do is, just to make it a little bit different, is we put together a PowerPoint based on so many of you have heard Bob's talk on psychology in your life with Power Learning and the Power Framework. But what we did is we took his PowerPoint deck and we edited it down a bit so that you can use it for your own sales presentations that you might have. And what I thought we would do is have Bob walk through this deck and talk about each slide the way he would talk about it if he were, giving the presentation. And then what we'll do after this is send the deck to you so that you can use it. In some cases, you might want to modify it depending on how much time you would have for a sales presentation. You could cut it down. You could add anything that you thought was missing. And certainly Nancy and I could help you with that as well, adding anything. But wanted to give you another sales tool for you to use this deck for any presentations, and then have Bob actually talking or going through the slides and helping you with some of the language that you could use if you were using this deck. Does that sound okay? I'm assuming yes. All of you are on mute and not going to respond to me, but what I would, I'd invite you, I think, it's a good sized group, but I still think it's manageable that if we're going through any of the slides or any of the details and Bob's talking, I think that we'll be, Bob, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we'll be okay. If you have questions about a particular slide or about how to talk about something, I would say let's try to just go ahead and ask your questions. I think that we're a small enough group that can still be manageable. Certainly, you can always chat in any questions too, and we'll try to monitor that, or Kyle will try to monitor that. But I think this could be a good opportunity to say, hey, Bob, you're talking about it this way. What else could I, whatever questions might come up as Bob's going through each individual slide. Nancy, anything to add? Okay, I think we'll go ahead, and Bob, why don't you get started, and I will turn it over to you.
All right, great. Thanks a lot, Ann. And thanks to everybody for joining us this afternoon. I really appreciate it very much. I have such respect for what you guys do, so I really want to try and be helpful here. And as Ann said, please feel free to interrupt with any questions that you might have as I'm going along. So I want to start. What I usually do is talk about who our students are, who the students are that faculty, instructors face in their classes. And they're different from students even of 5 years ago, and definitely different from those of a decade ago. So first of all, they see the world in a 24/7 perspective. They think that it's quite all right to send a text to their peers at 3 in the morning, and there's almost an expectation that there'll be a response. And the same thing holds true of their perceptions of faculty. So they tend to think of instructors as on call 24 hours a day. If they send an email or text and don't get a response in a short time, they're very apt to send a follow-up to see if the first one has been received. They're also much more prone to multitasking. They do a lot of it, and they think they're really good at it. The reality is different. It's still, there's certain limitations on human beings, and we really can't pay much attention to more than one channel at a time, but most students think that they're extremely good at multitasking and can sit in a classroom and pay attention to the instructor and at the same time check their email and surf the web. So it's a kind of disconnect from reality. It's also the case that our students have very short attention spans, and there's actually data showing that the attention spans now are shorter than they were even five years ago. It's just very hard to present any information in more than short spurts. It's just very hard to keep attention spans going. They're also happier doing things rather than being told how to do things, and that connects to their view of expertise. Expertise tends to be undervalued. Students are much more likely to listen to their peers than to their instructors. When they seek out advice, they'd much rather go to a fellow classmate than to their instructor. And they just don't hold the same view that instructors are experts in a particular field. It just doesn't have the same cachet that it once. Being an instructor just doesn't have the same cachet that it used to. They also tend to have overinflated views of their abilities. There's very good research showing that students are more narcissistic than they used to be. They think they're more able than they really are. They think they're more they're better students than they really are, and they overestimate how well they'll do. Part of it seems to be the way students are being raised today, children are being raised today, where parents are much more interested in promoting self-esteem than promoting actual achievement. So we have a generation of students who feel like they're all number one, they've all won first prize, and their parents have bought into this view that it's very important to push children's self-esteem. So whereas there used to be the kind of equation that you earn self-esteem through achievement, now it's thought that self-esteem is a prerequisite for being a successful and happy person. So that leads to clear overinflation in terms of how people view their own abilities. And they also spend limited time on their homework. They don't think they need to do as much schoolwork as students once did. So I love this particular chart because it's data collected by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. It's very reliable. It goes across every sector of students in college, from private sector to two-year schools to four-year schools, and I think it's very telling. And if you start on the light blue slice of the pie on the bottom there, on the bottom left, they spend about 2 hours on work, and moving counterclockwise, 4 hours on leisure and sports. You can see sleeping, the green chunk, is the biggest, the thing they do most of all. They get 8.8 hours of sleep. Very envious. There's mysterious other there, a little over 2 hours. They're traveling for an hour, almost an hour and a half. They're doing some grooming for almost an hour. They're eating and drinking for an hour. But then there's that last purple slice, and that is educational activities. That's 3.5 hours on the average day. Now, remember that this includes time spent going to class and being in class, as well as working on homework outside of class. So if you think about that, that's a very limited amount of time that's spent on educational activities. And students just are not spending as much time as they used to on their schoolwork. So what are the implications of this, and I think there are several, and it speaks to why psychology in your life really works to meet who our students are and meet students' needs. First of all, short is better. They have short attention spans. They don't spend a lot of time on their schoolwork. So material that's presented in a modular format with short chunks of information is much better suited to who the students are than traditional chapters. The second point, the second instructional implication of who our students are is that material really needs to be incredibly clear and straight to the point. And that's why using heat maps to do revisions is I think, extraordinarily important, because it really allows me as an author to hone in on material that is giving students trouble as they work through Connect and SmartBook, and it really allows me to on a paragraph level and sometimes a sentence level to be sure that the material is very clear. And the third instructional implication is that it's extremely important to relate material to students' lives. The examples that are provided in psychology and life are designed to really speak to who students are, to speak to the kind of students that they are, and the kind of people that they are, and the way that they study and the way that they think about the world. So all that can be derived from the nature of who our students are today. Now, the book is divided into fairly traditional, although short treatment of introductory psychology. Starts off with an introduction, goes into more of the kind of sciencey neuroscience of behavior, sensation, and perception. Then moves into states of consciousness and learning, thinking. It covers memory and cognition and language. Then I talk about motivation and emotion, then development, personality and individual differences, then 2 chapters on psychological disorders, one on what the disorders are, and the second on the treatment of psychological disorders, and then finally in the last chapter, social psychology. So it's a very, in a sense, traditional overview of the field, but presented in modular format and presented in a way that is very effective in reaching students. There are also some modules that are available in Create, and let me go through some of them. One is diversity and culture. That's very important in a lot of different school settings. There's a separate module on environmental psychology and sustainability, and that's a topic that's increasingly important within the field of psychology, and also increasingly important in particular school settings. Forensic psychology looks at the law and psychology, and organizational psychology is looking really at industry and organizations and how they are impacted by psychological factors. And finally, there's also a module available on statistics for those instructors that want to present more information on using statistics, particularly in conducting research. So those are all additional modules that can be customized to the book. I want to talk about one of the very significant features of Psych in Your Life, and that is that it uses the power framework as a way to organize the material and as a way of providing students with a framework to help them learn the material, to motivate them, and to think more critically. And power is basically a 5-step framework, POWER, and it is something that is extraordinarily useful, not just in terms of learning academic material and engaging with academic material, but also for people in their lives and careers. Let me just go through the 5 steps. Prepare is the stage of thinking about what your goals are. What is it that you want to accomplish in any particular task? Organize is once you have your goals in mind, think about what you need to accomplish those goals. It can be mechanical kinds of goals, things like I need a paper and a pencil and a computer. Or it can be more intellectual kinds of goals. I need to understand certain precursors in order to engage with this new material. If I'm learning algebra, I need to learn first. I need to know basic math. So there's certain things that are necessary in terms of engaging with whatever activity I'm trying to do. The central part of the framework is work, and that is you need to do the task, you need to work on it, you need to be motivated and think about it and try and accomplish it. Then the last 2 goals follow from once you finish the work, and they're equally as important as anything else in the framework. So for instance, you want to evaluate how well you've accomplished your goal. Did you do what you wanted to do? Were you successful at it? And finally, rethink is the last stage, and that is basically thinking about, did I have the right goals initially? Were they the kinds of things that were going to help me be successful? When I talk to instructors about power, the power framework, I often talk about how they prepare a lecture class. I go through the stages, and it really brings home, I think, the applicability of the power framework. So, for instance, when you're doing a lecture, if you've ever done one, you probably, or prepared for a class, you probably first of all think, what is it I want to accomplish in this class? What is it? What material do I want to go over? What are my objectives in terms of what I want to accomplish? And then I organize. As an instructor, I get materials together, I do research, I try and get the things I need, the material I need so that I can actually conduct the lecture. Then I do the work, which is giving the lecture, presenting the class, presenting the material in class. And afterwards, I evaluate, I think, well, how successful was this class? Did I engage the students? Did I excite the students? Was I able to convey the material in the best possible way? And then finally, the last step, rethink, is something I do when I think about, did I have the right goals to begin with? Going back to the prepare step, thinking about what my goals were, what my objectives are. Did I accomplish those objectives? And so that, for an instructor, makes it very clear about how you use the power framework. And you can also think about it in terms of virtually any kind of task that you are trying to accomplish, because you always want to think about, you always want to prepare, you want to think about what your goals are, you want to organize what you need to accomplish the task, do it, and then think about how you evaluate it, was I successful, and finally rethink, did I have the appropriate kinds of goals? Now, power, it turns out that power is extremely effective and also very intuitively clear and feeling. It's logical, it's a framework that anybody can apply after hearing an explanation of it, and it's very effective because it really gives people a framework in order to do the work that they want to accomplish. It's also very versatile. It works across academic and career and personal life, and can be applied in virtually any kind of setting. It's also research-based. One of the ways I devised the power framework is looking at research that's been conducted by psychologists probably for the last 30 or 40 years, and it's very clear that it is power is consistent with the research. I actually, if anyone is interested, I have a paper that I wrote that describes the research basis for the power framework with lots of references and citations. But it's very clear that the steps in the power framework, each one of those is based upon research. The other thing that's very exciting to me is that power can be used across the curriculum, and I'll be talking a little later about how the different instantiations of the power framework in various Royal products. So I want to talk a little bit about how psychology in your life uses the power framework, and it's very, I mean, in one sense subtle, but it's also very clear. So for the prepare step, this is part of obviously module 12. First of all, the prepare step is indicated by learning outcomes, a set of learning outcomes for the module. And then the organized step is represented by an outline. Work is basically you read the content of the module, evaluate very explicitly did you learn the material in the module through a series of objective kinds of questions. And finally, rethink is represented by open-ended subjective kinds of questions which are designed to pull for critical thinking. So the power framework is extremely clear in the book. And the other thing that I think is absolutely terrific about the design of the book is that it mimics what's in Power Learning, my student success series of products, and it uses exactly the same kind of graphical approaches. So it's basically the same. It's presented in the same way. So Psychology in Your Life has been really designed to follow up a first-year experience course that presents the Power Framework initially. Obviously, they can be used independently, but they also make a very nice pairing together in the student success course as well as introductory psychology. There are also a number of features that speak specifically to private sector students. This book was written with private sector students in mind. So we have Exploring Diversity, which talks about ways in which diversity impacts on how people are affected by the different kinds of individuals that they're going to be interacting with. From the perspective of, here's an example of a medical or dental assistant, there are lots and lots of these examples of the kinds of careers that students in private sector schools are going to be involved with. And so it's very clear how the material relates to the careers that students are studying in their classes. And there's also another feature which I'm very proud about is profiles of success, where I've taken, these are real students, and they are attending, in many cases, schools that you may be calling on. They're recent, they're new, and Nancy Welcher was very diligent in helping to identify these students and connect them with schools that actually might be adopting, have the potential for adopting the book. So it talks about how these students have been successful, the kinds of challenges that they've faced and overcome, and they're meant to be inspirational and show how psychology can be helpful in overcoming various challenges. There are other features: becoming an informed consumer of psychology, very practical information, drawing upon work that psychologists have done. There's a case study relating to some kind of career problem. And finally, every chapter ends with a visual summary, which is very helpful to visual learners. And what I'm finding is more and more students think of themselves as visual learners. So having a visual summary is a very helpful kind of feature. The other thing that I think is important to keep in mind is Psychology in Your Life is really just one of a series of titles that draw upon our framework. There's Student Success Book, Power Learning Your Life. There's a sociology text that incorporates the Power Framework. And then there's a series of math books that I worked on with Sherry Messersmith, and all of those titles incorporate the Power Framework. So it's the Power is a framework that works across the gen ed curriculum, and really, I think, allows for conversations to go in many different directions and many different courses. So that's what I want to say. I haven't heard any questions yet. I'm hoping now that you've been through this, and you will unmute and ask me some questions. And I also want to reiterate what Ann said. This deck was really designed to be something that you could use in presenting the Power Framework, and I'm hoping that you will be able to make some use of it as you go out and talk about the title. So, any questions, comments, thoughts, success stories? Any love to hear anything?
Yeah, we'd love to hear some success stories.
Just wanted to say that we obviously have two adoptions right now in education affiliates and Delta Career Education, and a lot of fans of your book there, Rob. I was thinking about that paper you said you wrote, and that might be really helpful for me, at least, I think, to have, especially when we're having conversations about the Power Framework, not just in psychology, but, as you pointed out, the whole gen ed curriculum, and trying to get whole academic divisions bought in. I'd love to get my hands on that if I could.
Sure. Ann, do you have that? Can you send that? Or I can send it to you. I'll send it to you, Ann. You can send it to me.
I'll send it as a follow-up, because I also, like I said at the beginning, I'll send this deck, and then I have one other flyer that I put together that highlights the Power series as a whole, so I will send all of that as follow-up. All right, thank you. And this is Sarah Victoria. And you created that flyer for me when I was working at South College the end of April. And I shared that with you, Kyle. I don't want to post it to our Psych site or Spark site, or if Ann wants to send it out. But I have to pay Bob a compliment that when we went into South College, we were doing an in-service, so it wasn't only focused on psychology or the Power Framework. We also had AAP, we had business, but our keynote speaker was Bob, and he kind of did a presentation similar to what he just did with us. So it was very focused on statistics, on the reporting features and adaptive learning and all of that. He really gave a very thorough overview of how statistically students do better when they're using, adaptive learning, et cetera, and the Power Framework. And then after that, we had breakout sessions for product demonstrations. And at the end, and by the way, Bob
got 5 out of 5. Every single evaluation was like, Dr. Feldman, 5, 5, 5 out of 5. They loved it. And they thanked us for showing up and talking about research and statistics rather than showing up and doing product demonstrations and pushing our product. So I want to thank you, Bob, for that. And
You're welcome.
yeah. And bringing him in to do that kind of a conversation before you talk about products and sales or anything like that, it really works for us there. So I want to thank you again.
My pleasure.
Hey Bob, it's Nancy Carr. I just wanted to say, you mentioned that profiles of success, and there was, Nancy Welcher did work with Pittsburgh Tech in getting one of those students featured in on one of those pages, and it was a very big deal for Pittsburgh Tech, and they're kind of using that as a marketing piece, and I think they're going to display that profiles of success somewhere within the building, and they hope to continue on down replicating that, but that solidified the adoption there. So that was Pittsburgh Tech couldn't be happier, and don't use anything that Bob Feldman is a part of. So that profile of success is fabulous. That right up on that particular student, and I just want to call him to perhaps, I think, or maybe graphic arts. I can't really remember, but I know the good ed director and online director were they just couldn't say enough great things about that, and they really made a big deal about the presentation of that to the student and everything. So, thanks for doing that and getting my solidifying that adoption there.
Oh, great. I'm glad to hear that. And I've got to think Nancy spent a lot of time working to identify these students, really.
Yes, she did. I appreciate the comment related to that, for sure.
Yeah, and another thank you from Sarah, because you have 2 Lincoln students in those student success profiles. Hey guys, it's Nancy. Sorry, I was on mute. We were talking. But yeah, that's great. That's what they're intended to do, is to help like that. So we've got a few other schools on there. I'm hoping that we get the same kind of feedback from. So glad to know that it's going to help. Does anyone have any comments on what would make this deck better for you to use? We've got some videos that we'll put. But if you have any comments like that, if you send them to Anne, that would be great. We want to make this, a time saver for you and very useful for you. And let us know. And let us know too if you would use it or if you wouldn't, and what would you use if not something like this? Because I know it's not always about the Psych course, but maybe about the series, maybe more information about the series in general. As like a gen ed win. Let us know what we can do.
Yeah, happy to modify. We do still have some money for market development too. Some of you have taken us up on our offer to have some of your key decision makers review chapters of psychology in your life, and we still have budget for that. So again, if you come across any leads or any PDMs who are interested in reviewing, even if it's not specifically for psychology, but for the power framework for use across the curriculum, we could design a survey around that as well. So more than happy to work with you or help you with any leads that you have.
Well, I just want to add, and I know that Sarah and Nancy and Hank can vouch for this, that I'm glad to help out in any way that I possibly can. So if you want me to send emails or do anything else, I'm really happy to help you. And you have to tell me what to do, but I'm more than happy to follow through.
I guess if there's no other questions, we can let you go a little early. We do really appreciate such a large turnout for this. So thank you so much. And I will send an email with all of the follow-up collateral for you guys as well.
Perfect.
Here for questions. Thank you, Anne, for setting this up. Another.
Thank you.